My name is Daniel Harper, and this happened to me 2 years ago. I was 25 at the time and working late shifts at a warehouse outside my town. The drive home usually took about 40 minutes along a long rural highway. Most of the road cut through farmland and forest. At night, it was almost completely empty. There were no streetlights for miles. That night was in early November. The air was cold enough that fog started forming over the fields. The road looked darker than usual. I left work around 11:40 p.m. The parking lot was almost empty when I pulled out. Within minutes, I was already on the highway. The first 15 minutes of the drive were normal. No traffic, just the sound of my tires against the pavement. Then I noticed headlights behind me. At first, it didn't seem strange. Cars appear on that highway every now and then, but this one stayed far behind me. The distance never changed. It stayed about the same for several miles. The headlights just floated in my mirror. I checked my speed, then I checked again a few minutes later. The car was still there. That was when I started paying attention. The road ahead of me was completely empty. No oncoming traffic, no houses, just darkness stretching for miles. Then something strange happened. The headlights behind me suddenly turned off. At first, I thought the driver had turned down another road. But when I checked the mirror again, I could still see the outline of the car. It was still following me, just without headlights. My stomach tightened immediately. The fog made everything harder to see. The car stayed about the same distance behind me. I slowed down slightly. The car slowed down too. It matched my speed perfectly. That was when I started feeling uneasy. I pressed the gas pedal a little harder. My speed went up by about 10 miles per hour. The car behind me sped up too. Still no headlights. The highway curved through a wooded section. Tall trees blocked most of the moonlight. The road ahead felt like a tunnel of darkness. I checked the mirror again. The headlights suddenly came back on. Now the car was closer, much closer than before. The light filled my rear window. I switched lanes briefly so the driver could pass. The car didn't pass. It stayed behind me. The headlights flickered once, then they turned off again. My heart was beating faster now. Something about the way the driver moved felt intentional, almost like they were playing with distance. A few miles ahead, there was a gas station that stayed open all night. I decided I would pull in there if the car kept following. I checked the mirror again. The car had moved closer. So close now that I could see the outline of the driver. But something looked wrong. There was no passenger, and the driver wasn't sitting upright. The figure looked slumped forward slightly, like they were leaning toward the steering wheel. I looked back at the road quickly. The highway sign for the gas station exit appeared ahead. I slowed down and turned onto the exit ramp. The car behind me followed. That confirmed it. I pulled into the gas station parking lot. Bright fluorescent lights lit the entire area. I parked near the front entrance. The car rolled slowly into the lot behind me, but instead of parking nearby, it stopped at the far edge of the lot. Just sitting there, engine running, headlights still off. I stayed inside my car. The gas station clerk glanced outside but didn't seem concerned. After about 30 seconds, the car moved. It drove slowly toward the exit. Then it stopped again, right at the edge of the parking lot, facing the road, not leaving, just waiting. I sat there for almost 5 minutes. Eventually, I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe the driver had just stopped to check directions. I pulled out of the gas station and turned back onto the highway. The car didn't move at first, but the moment I passed the exit ramp, it followed again. The headlights came on this time, and the car accelerated quickly. It closed the distance between us in seconds. Now it was directly behind me again, less than one car length away. My hands were gripping the steering wheel tightly. The driver flashed their headlights twice, then once more. Then they turned them off completely. The road ahead was completely empty. No houses, no traffic, just dark forest. That was when the car suddenly sped up. It pulled beside me. For a moment, both cars drove side by side. I turned my head slightly. The driver looked straight at me. His face was pale, his expression completely blank, and both of his hands were resting loosely in his lap. Not on the steering wheel. The car drifted slightly toward my lane, then suddenly corrected itself. The driver never touched the wheel. I slammed on the gas and sped forward. The car behind me didn't chase. Instead, it slowed down immediately. Within seconds, its headlights disappeared behind a curve. I drove the rest of the way home as fast as I could. Sometimes when I've had a really rough day and I'm having troubles relaxing, I go for a drive to clear my mind. There's something about driving down the back gravel roads that soothes me. I admit, it can be a little creepy at times. It can be spooky driving out in the middle of nowhere, only able to see as far as your headlights allow. The trees hiding whatever could be lurking just beyond your line of vision. What's even scarier is hearing something in the car with you when you know damn well you're alone. Last night, I was looking for a way to calm down after working a stressful 12-hour shift. I got home around 7:30 p.m., made and ate some dinner, then watched TV. In bed trying to get some sleep to do it all over again the next day. I tried to sleep for over 4 hours, tossing and turning, unable to find sleep. Sometime past midnight, frustrated as hell, I got out of bed and grabbed my car keys. I stormed out the front door and hopped in my beat-up Jeep, speeding out of the driveway. I was angrily muttering to myself about, can't just roll over and sleep like a normal person. After 10 minutes of driving, I found myself down one of my go-to back roads. It's more of a 2-track, surrounded by dense pine trees. I like this road because it's spooky as hell. The trees are a go dense, you can't see 10 feet into the woods, letting my imagination run wild. I had to slow down to around 25 miles per hour to safely navigate without hitting anything. I turned the radio all the way down, turning my full attention to the thin road in front of me. Just as I started to get that eerie feeling my car radio blared as loud as it could, a talk radio station had somehow popped on even though I was listening to 80s rock before. I jumped, scrambling to turn the volume down. Before my hand found the volume knob, the radio cut out completely. I scrunched my eyebrows in confusion, looking at the radio as if it had its own mind. All of a sudden, a wave of dread hit me like a ton of bricks. The hair on my arms and neck stood on end, my heart beginning to race uncontrollably. It got so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. After a few seconds of that eerie silence, I started hearing something behind me in the back seat. It sounded like someone was pushing down into the back seat, like suddenly a lot of weight pushed it down. Crack. A loud pop made me jump a little, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. I started to feel a presence, like someone or something was in the car with me. I could feel it get closer, like it was leaning in to whisper something in my ear. I noticed movement in my rearview mirror as well. Something was definitely in my backseat. A deep breath exhaled, blowing its breath right in my right ear. I was completely paralyzed in fear, not knowing how to react. I was still driving down the road, but at maybe 5 miles per hour. I was too afraid to turn around and see what was behind me. I had this gut feeling that if I turned around, something bad would happen. A muffled voice called in my ear. Its voice sent shivers down my spine. It sounded like an old woman, if she were trying to speak while covering her mouth. It stared to breath, deep, raspy breaths in my ear, as if it was out of breath and struggling to breath. Its breath smelled like rotten eggs, making me almost gag. Every now and then I could see movement in my mirror as it shifted around. "Look at me, please," the muffled voice said after a few seconds of breathing down my neck. I ignored it and kept my eyes straight forward. Finally, I could see a driveway about 20 feet ahead to my left. Once I got to it, I pulled in and turned the car around as calmly as I could. "Look at me," it growled. My muscle tensed as it spoke. It was even scarier sounding when angry. I managed not to jerk the steering wheel and successfully turned around. I noticed I was driving a little too quickly for the road I was on, but I couldn't help it. I wanted to get back to the main road where there was other people. If I was lucky enough to make it that far, I felt pressure on my shoulder as it must have grabbed me. Its fingers felt incredibly bony and shaky. I stayed driving straight and tried not to let it affect me. There was now jerky movements that I could see in the reflection of the mirror, like it was having a seizure or something. The fingers dug into my shoulder, making me wince in pain. "Look at me," it growled in my ear again, taking deep breaths in between each word. I noticed my foot consistently pressing the gas pedal harder and harder. I glanced at the speedometer and saw I was now going 50 miles per hour, sliding as I went around turns. I have never wanted out of the back roads so badly in my life. Somehow, I was able to keep the car in control, avoiding the trees that were just feet from my front end. At one point, my tail end clipped a tree as I slid. I just kept driving as fast as I could. Its fingers were digging so hard in my shoulder that I was getting harder to make the turns. Up ahead, I saw the stop sign and I almost cried out in joy. Crack. The same cracking noise from early rang through the car. I could hear the pressure of my backseat leave as well as the heavy feeling of dread that hung in the air. I didn't even notice I was holding my breath until then. Taking a huge breath as I blew through the stop sign, I noticed a tear was rolling down my cheek as well. I could tell by the atmosphere in the air that whatever was in my back seat was now gone. I sped the whole way home, not stopping at any of the stop signs on the way. I'd never felt so much relief in my life as I did in that moment. I pulled in my driveway. I slammed the shifter in park and bolted it inside, panting heavily. I checked the doors and windows twice before retreating to my room, making sure the whole house was locked up. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep after that. I sat wondering what in the hell that was all night. The next day was a long, horrible 12-hour shift. I was more than thrilled when 7:30 came and I could clock out. I knew I'd struggle sleeping again, but one thing is for sure. I won't be taking a nighttime drive to help me relax. I don't know what that was, but I pray I never encounter it again. My husband has been away on a business trip up north for the last few days. I work as a wedding caterer, so I often have to work late and in some pretty remote places. The other night I finished working a venue around 11:30 p.m. My colleague took the van back to our warehouse. I had drove myself to the venue, which was an old barn in the middle of the countryside. As I left the venue, I was hoping other guests were coming my way, but unfortunately not. I only lived 30 minutes away, but my journey home took me through single-track roads surrounded by farmland. As I turned off the main road onto the rural track, I hastily turned my lights to full beam. Around 10 minutes in, the road began to narrow. The branches of sidelining trees brushed against my car. I was only going around 20 miles per hour as I cautiously made my way through. I was conscious that a car could come towards me at any moment. Suddenly, something emerged from a bush up ahead. My apprehension caused me to jump as I hit the brakes. A small deer walked across the road and disappeared into the parallel trees. I laughed, getting scared of a deer, I thought, mainly to compose myself. I never liked the dark as it was. A noise then echoed behind me like someone had tapped their fingernails down my back windscreen in a wave-like motion. I slowly peered into my rearview mirror, expecting to see a horror straight out of a Stephen King novel. My eyes were only met by darkness. I locked the car doors to try to ease my fear. I put the car in drive and pressed my foot down firmly on the accelerator. My tires span as I weaved through the winding trail. All I wanted to do was to get home. I turned the corner as my headlights exposed a looming figure in front of me. I slammed the brakes, but it was too late. They went under. I felt every bump, my stomach sinking with each and every one. I came to a stop, thoughts racing through my mind. I'm going to jail was my first thought, then quickly to the fact I had just killed someone. I was in shock. I couldn't bring myself to look back. Smoke filled the air around me. I forced myself to turn my head eventually. The mangled body lay on the cold, dusty road. I didn't even have time to compose myself when, to my horror, their head twisted to face me. Their arms followed, twisting and planting down in front of them. The loose, ripped shirt hung around his torso. The startling thing was this person didn't have a face, no hair, no eyes, no nose or mouth. These features were replaced by thick, ridged scars as they glowed in my bright red taillights. I froze. I couldn't process what was happening. This wasn't normal. This was no man or woman. I panicked and the adrenaline kicked in. I shifted into reverse and stamped on the pedal. The engine roared as I launched backwards. There was a crash off my rear bumper, followed by the jaggering bumps under my right side wheels. I quickly shifted into drive and sped off down the road. As I drove off, I peered back into my mirror, the road behind me being swallowed by darkness. I couldn't see any of the hallowing scene that I had left behind. I continued up the road with my hands gripping the steering wheel, looking in my rearview mirror every couple of seconds. I had 3 miles to go until I got to a main road, and I slowly increased my speed to escape the horrific incident. I came to the main road and continued home. I leapt out of the car and fumbled my keys to try to unlock my front door. My heart was still racing from the terrifying experience. I opened the door, rushed through, and locked it straight away. I pressed my back against it and sighed in relief. I tried calling my husband, but now being past midnight, he didn't answer. I turned the TV on and tried to calm myself down. After 20 minutes, I was finally able to breathe normally and was getting tired. I went to get a glass of water from the kitchen. I stopped, rooted to the spot. It was in the window, the now bloody head pressed up against the glass behind my sink, not moving. I shakily got out my phone and called the police. They were here within minutes. As I went through what I had saw to the officers, I could see the disbelief in their faces. I was hoping the blood on the window would prove it, but it was gone. They left me 45 minutes later. I was still a nervous wreck, but by this point, I just wanted to go to bed. I made sure everything was locked and headed upstairs. After a broken night's sleep, I woke the next morning. To my surprise, my husband was home and laying next to me. I was still half asleep as I rolled over to hug him. Maybe the police had checked in with him to come home and I had slept through his phone calls. He startled and turned. My eyes began to adjust. This wasn't my husband. The deep blood-stained ridges were now inches from my face. I screamed out of pure horror. I grabbed the nearest thing to me, a glass, and smashed it over his disfigured head. I escaped through the door and ran out of the house while grabbing my bag. I got in the car and sped off down the road. My fuel was getting low. I knew I wasn't going to get far enough away, so went straight to the train station. I jumped on the first train to near where my husband is working. I have spoken to him and I am doing okay. As I sit here writing this post, I still can't process what's happened to me the last 12 hours and I'm still pretty shaken. I just don't know what to do. When I get to my husband, we will figure something out. All I know for sure is I am not going back to that house. Not alone. My main fear now is it has got attached to me. This happened during a long drive across Nevada about 4 years ago. I was 28 at the time and driving alone from Reno to Las Vegas. It was supposed to be a normal overnight trip. I left Reno around 9 p.m. The first couple hours were uneventful. The highway was quiet with only a few distant cars. Most of the drive cut through long stretches of desert. At night, the land looked completely empty. Just sand, rock, and darkness. There were very few lights anywhere. Occasionally a gas station appeared along the highway. Between those stops, it could be 30 miles of nothing. Around midnight, the temperature dropped quickly. Desert nights get cold much faster than people expect. I rolled my window up and turned the heater on low. The road ahead looked like a thin ribbon of asphalt disappearing into blackness. My headlights barely touched the edges of the desert. Everything outside that beam was invisible. About 2 hours into the drive, I noticed something far ahead on the shoulder of the road. At first, it looked like a road sign, but as I got closer, I realized it wasn't a sign. It was a person. A woman was standing on the side of the highway. She wasn't waving for help. She wasn't walking either. She was just standing there. That immediately felt strange. There were no buildings nearby, no broken down cars, nothing that explained why someone would be standing alone in the middle of the desert at 1 a.m. I slowed down slightly as I approached. The woman wore a long white dress. Her hair hung down over part of her face. She stood perfectly still. As my headlights passed over her, I noticed something else. She wasn't looking at the road. She was looking directly at my car. Her head slowly turned as I passed her. The moment my car moved ahead of her position, I checked my rearview mirror. She was still standing there, not moving, just watching my car drive away. I kept driving for several minutes. Eventually, I convinced myself she must have been waiting for someone. Maybe her car had broken down earlier. Still, something about it felt wrong. About 15 minutes later, the road curved slightly through a rocky section of desert. My headlights swept across the roadside, and that was when I saw her again, standing on the shoulder, the same white dress, the same long hair. My stomach dropped instantly. There was no possible way she could have walked that far in 15 minutes, especially across open desert. I slowed down again as I passed her. She didn't move. She didn't wave. She didn't even step toward the road. She just watched my car. Her face remained partly hidden by her hair. I checked the mirror again. She was still standing there, exactly like before. I started feeling uneasy. There were no other cars anywhere. No houses, no lights, just desert. Another 10 minutes passed. I tried to focus on the road, but my mind kept going back to that woman. Then I saw something ahead again, a figure standing near the road. My chest tightened immediately. It was her. Same white dress, same posture, standing perfectly still. This time I slowed down much more. My headlights fully illuminated her. Her skin looked extremely pale. Her face looked almost emotionless. But something else caught my attention. Her feet, they were bare, standing directly on the rough desert gravel. I drove past her again, and once again she slowly turned her head to watch my car. I checked the mirror immediately. She was gone. Completely gone. The empty shoulder stretched behind me. No figure, no movement, nothing. I drove faster after that. The road felt longer now. Every mile felt heavier. About 20 minutes later, I reached a small gas station. The building looked old, but the lights were on. I pulled into the parking lot quickly. Inside, there was an older man working behind the counter. He looked up as I walked in. I asked him a simple question. Had he seen a woman walking along the highway tonight? His expression changed immediately. He asked me where exactly I saw her. I described the 3 locations. He stayed quiet for several seconds. Then he told me something that made my skin crawl. Several years earlier, a woman had died on that highway. Her car broke down late at night. She tried walking along the road to find help, but she never made it. A truck driver accidentally hit her in the dark. The accident happened in 3 different locations along that same stretch of highway. Witnesses said she had been walking back and forth along the road trying to flag someone down. The man behind the counter looked at me carefully. Then he asked something strange. Did she try to get you to stop? I told him no. She just stood there watching my car pass. The man nodded slowly. Then he said something I still think about. Most people say she tries to wave them down, but sometimes she just watches.